answering services where you can actually get through to a person very quickly because it's being farmed so correctly by this automated system. And gradually I'm now dealing with, so for example, my TV license. I paid that without talking to a single human being. Is the goal to have jobs, in which case I have to talk to human beings, or is the goal to have a system of function where I wouldn't even have to deal with a person? It's just done whatever I'm doing.
And efficient as well. Is the goal keeping human beings in employment, or is the goal optimum efficiency? Because really, the target demographic is your consumers, and the best way to make things better for your consumers is to make things quicker for them. Like, so for example, in Sainsbury's, if you want your customers to be able to go in, get their shopping and get out and get on with their lives. So it's the idea of making things better for your consumers, but there's always a short-sightedness with this sort of thing. It's the consideration of all these sort of things are always skin deep, because you think, oh yeah, we've made it more efficient, but then again we don't think a little deeper and go, but wait a minute, what about the person who used to do that job?
That's right. And more importantly, which supermarket are they shopping at now?
Exactly.
This is ultimately, anybody listening to this might think, well, I mean, if we're making it more efficient, then the market system's perfect because it's working out great. But of course, the thing is, as you are hinting at, the contradiction of all of this, and it's been called the contradiction of capitalism by a few economists, is that the more you automate, of course, the wider and the deeper the unemployment gap gets, and the more people are unemployed, the less people are there to buy those wonderfully turned out, very, very efficient goods.
Absolutely.
And while we all understand that it is valuable to be efficient, of course, that's why people like Sainsbury's and Boots now do it as well. And anybody who's putting in automatic cash desks. On one side, yes, we want to serve the consumers fast, but on the other side, consumers like it when they are served fast. It's a good thing, because it's efficient. It gets, they don't want to queue up for hours. In fact, I travel so much, and I the amount of queuing I do. One day, I'm actually going to use my phone to time all my queuing in one day, and try and get an average out over a couple of weeks, and to see how much of my life I'm actually just standing around doing nothing. Because I reckon it's an astonishing amount. So we do appreciate what efficiency is. That is valuable to us. But the real kicker to this whole thing is that, as AI is developing towards strong AI, we're starting to do inference based on AI, artificial intelligence. We're starting to be able to do very complex tasks. We're starting to be able to do things that humans can't do at all. We're not just replacing things, we're actually increasing the abilities of the human race. Gradually, we are eroding that economic basis that began the idea of jobs to begin with, and that's what needs to be addressed, absolutely. And you know what? It will be addressed. There's no way it can't be, because it's going to affect absolutely everyone.
When we talk about these kind of things, what do you normally say when you receive the projections of either it'll never happen, or it's fantasy, or it's impossible, or it's pipe dream, or it's utopian? What sort of things do you say when you receive those projections?
Sure, and that's one that we get a lot, of course, and it's very tempting, isn't it? Because of course, we sort of grumble and moan in this society. Well, here's the thing, man. If you think it'll never happen is okay to say, I don't know what you're basing that on for a start. You can't be basing it on history, because in history, almost every single time that anybody said it will never happen, it has happened. Yeah. This is what the Wright brothers heard. They even had official books and papers written by people on how heavier than air objects will never fly. They will never fly, and I know because I'm a scientist, right? But all they were doing was projecting. A heavier than air object was in flight right when they were writing that paper. It's called a bird, right? Flight is by definition a heavier than air object flying. That's what flight is. Right. So these kinds of projections do exist. And if you really want to be in the it'll never happen camp, then you might as well get outside of your house that a caveman would say will never be built, and never get on a plane that would never have been built and never would have existed, or a train that doesn't need, horses, no longer needed for transportation. Every innovation has been met by it'll never happen. It's not new. It's a gut reaction based on two things. One is complete ignorance, because you're saying that as a normal person. Oh, it'll never happen. Why not just have a look at it first and really get into the logic of it, okay? The second one is, and it's more understandable, this one, is that anything supremely foreign or that you've just never thought of before, because it jars with the society you've become accustomed to, because you've exercised your need to be accustomed, your customs are based on something, and they're based on the idea of a sort of self and not self, a possibility and an impossibility. We've sort of used that, even though they might be incorrect. That's how you normalize your head against not being surprised by every new building you see, or not being surprised every time you get in a lift and it moves. Yeah, you get used to it, right?
Yeah.
But people have to now get used to the future. And we've never had to do that. We've got used to the present, right? But you have to sort of get used to the future. So I say to them, listen, that's one of the things that's going on in your head. It went on in my head too. The sort of shock of the new is something that is utterly understandable, but it needs to be overcome because it's always, always, always been wrong. Okay, that's the first one. That's also the same as it's fantasy or it's impossible. Impossible, look at, heavier than air, it's the same thing. Utopian is a little bit different. It's a pipe dream or it's utopian. It's very depressing, and it's a real show of the current state of our lives, that we have happily swapped out the idea of any betterment of our lives as completely unrealistic utopian bullshit, right? I found that to be very depressing, that we are quite happily just going to go, oh, well, it's just the modern life, it's just the way it is, a billion people starving, a billion people, that's 1,000 million people. Oh, well, it's just the way it is. And that is really where that utopian comes from. Either because they're not understanding what you're showing them, and there's a couple of, utopian gets thrown at us specifically because of our advocation of the Venus Project or Buckminster Fuller or any of those people who actually sat down and designed what looks like quite alien structures, but which are actually designed according to nature and according to function, right? That's usually where that comes from. So the utopian argument is an interesting one. It's very depressing to me that we have actually settled for a society that, no matter how painful it is and how bad its effects are and how deleterious its effects are, anything, even a slight attempt in the opposite direction towards good for all, is considered utopian, by definition unachievable and dreamy and not based on reality. And I find that very sad. It shows you how heavily this system indoctrinates you. And I mean any system indoctrinates you. Any system has to have your buy-in, including the one that we're talking about. It's just at the moment the buy-in is, well, it doesn't matter how badly it's serving you. You're not a patriot if you don't support this, or you are a communist.
Oh, yeah.
It's you just get negative effects for even attempting any kind of improvement. But the other one as well is, the idea about the world will never work together. That's just impossible in a pipe dream. We work together more now as a human race than we ever have done. We know what the word international means, right? That alone, we are a global society. We know the Earth is round. That alone explains that we're working together, because we at least know the bounds of our Earth and it is connected. Websites are hosted all over the world. I'm pretty sure if we dug it out, somebody like the British National Party is probably hosted in like America or something. It'd be very. But you and I are having this conversation. You're in one part of the country, I'm in another. I could be in another country completely, and we wouldn't know. The humans tend to connect, and we are working together more now than we did 50 years ago, thanks in part to technology, and of course that in part then makes us feel more global, and then we work together more as well. So it's this kind of feedback loop that's happening. So anyone who says, oh, it's utopian, you'll never get people to work together, on one side you have to say, look, mate, I'm sorry, but the system needs to be offering us more, right? We deserve more as human beings, everybody, including the ultra rich, because they're living a pretty rubbish life compared to one that would be in real efficiency and real cleanliness, because they're still breathing the same air. I don't see Rupert Murdoch wandering around with an air pack on his back and a mask. Right? He's breathing the London air as well, all right? So, on that side, and then on the other side, just look at the trends, man. We are working together more now. We just are. That's what the internet is. The internet is human beings working together and designing a network that allows us to do so.
Yeah, I guess another thing that tends to hold us back as a culture is the whole human nature argument as well.
Yeah, do you know what? Years ago, I was a Christian, and even after I was one, I believed in human nature, just purely because it's such a nice phrase, isn't it? We know the word human nature, or the phrase human nature, so it almost becomes built into our idea. It's funny, the idea that a word exists, so therefore the concept exists. You know what I mean? And people say, yeah, human nature, people are bad, and that's why. It's not money. It's just a medium of exchange. You have to point out to them, listen, it's very, very obvious that crime and mental illness and all those negative effects that we associate with human nature correlate exactly with the levels of deprivation in a society. If you go to Norway, where they have an open prison system and where they have extremely good public health and where they have proper laws about the environment, and where most of their energy comes from, they've got a huge amount of wind arrays and tidal arrays. I'd have to check that, but certainly a lot of it's renewable. Surprise, surprise, crime is lower, people are happier, and people are more trusting of each other. Absolutely. Go all the way to America or the UK, where we are so divided in the UK. We're almost worse than the US now. And you go there where the top 10% earn thousands of percent more than the lowest 10%, and where there's a real division of society, and where we're gradually selling off our socialized systems. Our healthcare is getting privatized over the next 10 years, whether you like it or not. It's the plans are in place. Where pensions are eroded by a system that's bailing out the banks, not realizing that what you're doing by bailing them out is pouring water into your own boat and sinking. Oh, what surprise, surprise! Crime is going up, and amidst this is one thing that I saw recently. Yesterday, break-ins or burglaries rose by 14% because we've cut back on the police. Now, the first thing to think there is, oh, right, so we need more police to keep the crime down. No, you've still not fixed society's problems, and now you don't even have your rubbish safeguards to stop crime happening. So actually what you need to do is to fix the root cause, not cut the police. Fix the root cause, then the police can be cut back or redeployed in socially meaningful ways, because they are skilled people. Do you know what I mean? They're trained human beings. You're just employing them in controlling ways at the moment. It's very much like the military in Haiti. The military, Haiti happened, terrible disaster. Again, technological problem, right? Poor people have bad houses. They will collapse, right? And then we said, the Americans said, well, the best, most organized force we have is the military. And they went and helped them. That's what the military is for, And it's a shame we don't see that more. So it's a general riff on human nature. Human nature, I mean, if you really look at it, it's got to be just the most monstrous myth that we have. And it's really only now gradually being looked at. Yeah, and you do have to break it down. And one of the best ways of doing that is to simply look at the stats. Go, listen, countries with social systems that are designed to look after everybody equally, no matter where you are on the pay grade. And sure, if you have a better pay grade, fine, you'll have some better stuff. But there's a general level. They don't have the problems that really divided societies do. It correlates, man. It correlates very, very clearly.
Yeah, I mean, going back to your point about the prison system in Norway, it reminds me of the video that was sent around. I think the video was called "What an RBE Prison Would Look Like," and it was
video.
Yeah, it was. I'm not sure whether it's on the deleted scenes on the DVD for Capitalism.
It is, yeah. It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't used in the film. I've seen that as well. Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, you've got to be a little bit wary because more does rosy tint everything. I mean, there are negative sides to the fact that we live in a society that has to have a prison system. But my God, it's a little bit like. If you look at the one that James Gilligan talks about, the Harvard professor of violence who, spent, I don't know, I think it was 25 years working in prisons and 40 years overall studying violence. Yeah. And he says, man, just go to kibbutzim in Israel. They don't have any violence. It's a huge deal if they have violence. Very much like we don't really have serial killers very often. Well, it's happening more now, but that's still seen with a real degree of shock that individual murder isn't. And I find that to be astonishing that we consider it only interesting or newsworthy if 16 prostitutes have been killed as to when one guy gets killed. That should be the same in your head. That is awful. It could be you. And that would obviously be the worst thing ever if it happened to you. So, we still don't really consider it correctly. But nevertheless, you're absolutely right. That that scenario where you see just a lack of violence, or indeed significantly less negative attributes to a system that treats human beings like human beings, no matter where they are on the scale of effect. That's absolutely